Chris Walsh, I hope you're having a great day. Welcome into the game in Tuscaloosa.
Thanks for having me.
Spring football, it's in the air, right?
It definitely is.
All right, so you were just your visuals, man. You're always one of those guys that takes in a lot of the observation period. Obviously, Tua Tagovailoa back out on the practice field.
Yeah, he was mostly working with head trainer Jeff Allen, and he was doing, kind of some rollouts. They were kind of looking to see how he could grip a ball, and I think they're going to be cautious with him. I mean, the one thing with an injury like this, and I actually experienced a lot more when I used to cover NFL teams. You don't want to aggravate it. You don't want to have this turn into like a reoccurring problem, and so I think they're just going to be a little bit careful with him this spring, and we'll see him probably in a couple of weeks, doing quite a bit more. But he was out there, and that was that's always a good sign.
Chris, do you think it impacts the quarterback competition at all?
No, not at all. I mean, it's spring football. It's that's kind of the disappointing part, is that we don't get to see them kind of going head to head as from day one kind of thing. But I'm definitely in the camp of this isn't going to be resolved in the spring. I don't think it's going to be resolved for a while. And in terms of the big picture, I don't think it's going to have a big impact.
Well, Chris, I think one of the things that it does do is when you look at the limits of 3 scholarship quarterbacks, I know they've got some walk-ons. They've got a walk-on, but they've got other walk-ons that are coming. It makes you understand that you're only one play away from going to your next quarterback, or however you want to do that, 1A, 1B, how you want to look at it. It makes you kind of step back a little bit. Sometimes it takes more than one quarterback in the game that we play in.
Oh, I'm definitely in the camp of you can't have enough quarterbacks, you can't have enough running backs, you can't have enough defensive linemen, all down the line. And I think it's one of those things when you start getting to these guys who are like, well, I'm not getting playing time, so I'm going to transfer. It's just kind of like, man, it's you kind of want to take them and say you're going to get your chance. If you just have to be a little bit patient. And I kind of alluded it a little bit before because I used to cover the NFL. You've got to have 2 quarterbacks. You've got to have more than 1 or 2 running backs. You've got to have numerous defensive linemen if you want to succeed. And, this is a lesson this team learned in spades last year, with all the guys who went down, especially, like the linebacker position and all the guys that kind of got thrown in before, some of them were ready and just, you had guys out of position and so forth. And the way that they were able to kind of manufacture things and just, find different ways to attack defensively, it was really impressive. And I don't think, that the coaches really got the credit for how they were able to keep that going last year.
Chris, when you look at other competitions, is there another one that obviously the quarterbacks is out front, but is there another competition that maybe you're keeping your eye on this team?
Well, the one that kind of jumps out right off the bat is center. I think that's going to be kind of the key decision, when they figure out who's going to be the center, and then they can start building around him kind of thing, because they've got more than 5 guys on the offensive line who could and probably should start. And then the obvious one after that is the secondary, kind of see how that all plays out. And that also probably is going to be resolved during this spring. I think that's definitely a competition that's going to be going on across the board when we get into the fall.
You think Trayvon Diggs can get one of those cornerback spots, in just your opinion?
I actually like him more as either a safety,
sure,
or maybe a star kind of thing. It's kind of a personal preference with me, because when we saw him, in Florida State, he seemed a little slow, reacting off the line. He's not one of those guys. His hips really turn as like you want to see for a starting cornerback. Now, I'm sure he's been working on it, and if he's improved in that area, then by all means, yeah, I think he's going to be a corner. But until I kind of see that, I think he could be like an Eddie Jackson kind of guy who went to safety and was really, really good.
Yeah, and I remember people describing Eddie Jackson. He's a safety with corner eyes. And
yeah,
you kind of see that guy that can almost play sideline to sideline in that back spot.
Yeah, and he's kind of like that, I think. And he's got he's probably has a little bit even more speed than Eddie does. So I think that there's an enormous amount of potential with Diggs, no matter where he ends up. It's going to be a little bit of, what's best for him and what's best for the team, and that's just going to take a little time to work out.
Chris, let me ask you about Alex Leatherwood, because when I go back and watch the game, when you know the outcome and you're not watching all the skill position guys, to me, one of the great performances of coming off of the sidelines and Alex Leatherwood, who you get the number one pass rushing guy from the other team. Alex Leatherwood faced that all in the second half, or majority of the second half, if not all the second half. I'm trying to think when Jonah Williams went down. But Alex Leatherwood was just that eye-opening performance. How can Jonah Williams hold this guy off?
Well, it's not just, Leatherwood. I think it's also Wills. Two guys who, they're ready. I mean, they could plug him in right now, and I don't think anyone would have any problems with that. But, it's kind of the same situation. It's like, with the defensive backs. We always hear about the offensive linemen. They want to get the best five on the field. And I don't think they know who the best five are right now. And, sometimes you have to look at it and just kind of say, some of this is going to work out, which we're seeing a little bit of because Wills is probably going to take all the first-team snaps with Womack out. And then, on the left side, right now, if Pierce Baker's going to end up being center, that opens up the slot, and they'll find a spot for Leatherwood. So it's just kind of, you kind of have to go through the process and kind of figure out, the pieces. But I think it really all starts with that center position.
We're talking to Chris Walsh, SECCountry.com, one of the beat reporters covering the University of Alabama. Chris, as you talked about yesterday, Nick Saban feels he hit a home run with Alabama's new assistant coaches. And you do see that spark in Nick Saban's energy level when you ask him about these assistant coaches. And you talked about hit a home run. It sounded like that as well from Nick Saban.
Yeah, just about every single guy, when they were going through the process, and it was like, you found out who it was going to be that was going to get the job. It's just, you heard people raving about him. This is a guy who was up and coming. He's really strong, really good at recruiting. And he could almost use his descriptions across the board, except for the defensive line coach, who, everyone was like, oh, man, that's just not fair that Alabama got him, the former coach from Missouri. So it's kind of interesting to me. I kind of I like to think back to a few years ago when, he came aboard and he was like, okay, we're going to go younger, and we're going to, we're going to get a little bit of a mix, but we're going to get guys that we can kind of develop. And I think he's really got that. And it's even on that first day of spring practice, seeing different drills and different guys doing different things, talking to the players, they're saying that they really like it so far.
Going to be a lot of fun, and there's some obviously superstars. Nick Saban always has the eye for talent, not just players, but also coaches, because you think about it, before the next 5 or 10 years, we're going to watch some of these coaches be highly sought after, and we'll take that next step to being a head coach. You watch it. 5, 10 years, we'll be covering another group of coaches that will now be head coaches, maybe in the SEC or maybe other places.
Yeah, but, one of the other advantages, when you talk about 4 or 5 years, is a lot of these guys aren't going to go anywhere for a couple of years, and they might actually get a little coaching stability. And I think that's something else Saban really wanted with this group, just because, everyone he's bringing in was gone within 1 or 2 years. And, I think it's Ray Tassapoy. I think is the only guy who's still coaching the same position group as 2015.
It is, yeah.
That's ridiculous. So, I keep going back to when he hired Kirby Smart when he was at LSU, and he kind of had the same problem. Guys were leaving, every couple of years, and he was like, I want someone that I can really develop and have grow in our system, and he's not going to come in with bad habits. And he's kind of doing that a little bit with this group again, not quite to that extreme, but it definitely reminds me of that.
You've covered the University of Alabama even longer than Nick Saban's been here in Tuscaloosa. Let me ask you, because we've been talking about this today, how would you attack Nick Saban? How would you try to beat Nick Saban? If you're an athletic director and you're out there, a lot of people choose to hire a Saban type to try to build that momentum. How would you go after a guy like Nick Saban? What would you do to counter his success in Tuscaloosa if you're in another program? That's the same thing the athletic directors are saying in college football.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
I think you got to go, well, regardless of direction you go in, you've got to have some patience. And I think that's one area that a lot of these other schools just are failing at dramatically, because the more turnover you see at all these other schools, the more it just helps out Alabama. And so that's first and foremost. So second of all, I think you could, option A is to do what Georgia did and bring in someone like, his right-hand man and kind of be like, okay, go get him kind of thing. And I think the Kirby Smart hire at Georgia was a terrific move. And I wrote back then, I was like, this is the guy who's going to be the thorn in Alabama's side. It's not, all these other ones. And it was kind of funny when I wrote that. I got grilled by a lot of people who said I wasn't, I was way off base. And I really don't think I was. So that's one side of it. The other side of it would be to, go and get someone who is young, innovator, someone who's going to be around for a while and can bring some fresh ideas kind of thing. And it always goes back to recruiting. You've got to be able to get, I don't know if you can beat Nick Saban in recruiting. Maybe you can in a place like Georgia, but you got to be at least competitive, and almost no one's been competitive.
Let me take you back a couple of days, and it was an article that really grabbed my attention because it was so in-depth, and I love when you are able to do this and you spend these long pieces. Bama two-sport athlete with type 1 diabetes, Keith Holcomb. Man, that was fun to read, and the challenges of being a diabetic and out on that football field because of all the loss of fluids and the adjustment and all those different things. You even spent a section there talking about the diagnosis and the pump that I've often wondered about. And you kind of answered my question that I've often wondered, how many times that thing's been jerked out?
It was a fun story to do. And Keith was great. His mother was great, talking to her. And the timing was kind of interesting because actually I interviewed him. He wanted to get into the baseball season before he really talked about it. So I had to wait a bit. And then I finally got him, and we were actually going to run that story before spring break, but I got the flu.
Oh,
so we had to kind of shelve it a little bit, and then it was just like, we have to run this before football starts because I don't know if Keith is going to be playing spring football this year. And I actually asked him, and he told me that a decision hadn't been made, but he kind of dropped a hint that he wanted to focus on baseball this season, especially after the hot start. And so, yeah, it's this kind of story that I really enjoy doing, and they were terrific. So I appreciate you bringing it up.
Yeah, it's fun because you see that people obviously struggle with that, and diabetes, as you put in there, you put a lot of different rates, but it just you often wonder, man. You see that linebacker, you see the insulin pump on the side, and you think about, man, it would be so easy for a player just to jerk that out. I mean, accidentally or purposely.
Yeah, and it's also, it was kind of interesting to me when he was more in high school. He basically had two places. He always had two places that he could plug that thing into his body kind of thing, because the body would start to heal up kind of thing. And they were always afraid it was going to get ripped up, and they wanted to have that, or just going to get ripped out. And they wanted to have kind of that option, the backup option of where they were going to attach it. And so he doesn't do that anymore, but it's just, even thinking about like even having the testing, numerous times a day, I don't like needles to begin with. And this guy, I mean, to go through what he does just to play on a practice, an everyday level, it's pretty remarkable.
Yeah. And I think the one thing, and I'll leave it with here, is the encouragement, because there's a lot of kids that go through juvenile diabetes. And to see Keith Holcomb achieve the success at baseball and football, you read that article, there's a lot of encouragement there that those kids can go through those same obstacles and to be able to play at the high level like the University of Alabama.
Yeah, and I really wasn't able to get into it in the story as much as I wanted to, but Keith really goes out of his way to talk to these kids, to answer whatever questions that he has, and they actually have a spot. I'm not going to say where it is, but like when he leaves the stadium, he goes to a certain spot, and these kids will wait for him. Wow. And so he can talk to them. And it's just it's really, really important to him that he does it. And this is his platform. This is going to be the thing he's going to be talking about for the rest of his life. And he really wants to. He's going to set up a foundation after he gets done at the university and try to find other ways that he can help kids in particular.